G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Yes, that's right, we're back on old Husky. Oh boy. Old Husky. I've already been over the pros and cons of this map. It's essentially a terrible map. The reason being is because it only has one airfield. And that one airfield is controlled by the Axis. So, if you don't have a tailhook, or if you don't kill the enemies all in one go, you're not going to win. It's very, very difficult, especially at jets. Or at, for example, in my Meteor Mark III video. It's very, very difficult to make a carrier landing, and a successful one at that, especially when the enemies have very large bombers. For example, the Dornier 217 and the Ju 288. You can actually take out, if you have two Dornier 217s, you can actually take out all four carriers. So there's no way you're going to land. And most of the time, those bombers can either sneak around the map, or they can simply just outrun enemies. If you have four Ju 288s, you can do the same, and you'll literally never get caught, because you'll just outrun them. So the map itself is very, very bad. It's good for ground attackers, but that's about it. The map itself, or specifically AD4s and Axis ground attackers. Any other ground attacker, you'll find that you'll have trouble landing on the carriers, or, for example, you'll find that you won't have the payload to really deal with certain things. You know, A26s, not really ideal for this. The PV2 though, the AD4, the SB2C, perhaps. But the problem with this map mainly is those carriers, and the fact that the Allies actually don't have an airfield. That's why the regular Sicily map, which is not the actual landing operation itself, but the next stage on from that, is exactly where the sweet spot is. An airfield for everyone, tanks, pillboxes, bases. Everything is spread out. Everything is reasonably well thought out. There are bases. There's enough for everyone to do. I don't understand why Husky needs to be in the game, because it's essentially just Sicily but worse. It's not that great, and I honestly don't see a place in the general RB rotation for it. If it were in EC as part of a larger map, then I would be okay with that, to be honest. But it really isn't. Anyway, enough talking about the map. We're here to talk about the P51D. Now, this is the D20, which is the 4.7 Premium, and it is a very special Mustang indeed. It is essentially a D5, but better in every way, in my opinion, just because it's lighter. The P51D5 is quite heavy and quite sturdy, whereas the P51D20 is a lot more nimble, and you'll see exactly what I mean in this video. You might mistake the D20's performance for that of the D30, but you would be wrong. The D30 is more for medium altitudes, whereas the D20 is more for high altitudes. I believe they're very, very similar in performance at their respective altitudes. They are similar weight, etc. But I personally prefer the D20, just because it's a bit of an all-rounder, and it is a premium, so I do get extra silver lions, which I'm going to need for that RP reduction that is coming in a couple of days. That'll be a welcome change, but as you can see, the enemy team is at low altitude. They're farming on the attackers, and that's something that I need to protect. I don't want all my teammates to die suddenly, and if I can use them as bait, I suppose that if they're going to go down without a kill, that's the best that they can do for myself and my team. Some bait. It sounds a little bit cruel, but if you consider that some of these planes aren't going to go down without taking someone else down with them, then using them as bait is probably the best thing to do for your team. Anyway, we're here to dive on a Focke-Wulf D, or 190D, and you can see just a quick spray and I get a couple of hits and a crit. Now, that basically means that the 190D is not going to be as combat effective as it otherwise would be. I follow through and now I'm putting myself into a climb. You can see the BF-109 G2 is trying to climb after me, and what I do is I immediately put it into a corkscrew climb, which essentially drains all the extra energy from the BF-109G, and whilst it is a very energy costly maneuver for myself, I've built up the altitude in a previous climb in order to execute that maneuver. And that is one of the things that the P-51D is really, really good at. Energy retention maneuvers and high altitude maneuvers, particularly when it comes to speed. The P-51D prides itself on its high altitude performance, and it really, really can't be underestimated. Once you get to about 4,200 meters, that second supercharger gear will kick in, and you'll be right in the good performance stage. So there's a BF-109G who's being distracted by my friendly P-51 over there, and there's another BF-109G who will shortly follow afterwards. This is a simple tactic, what you can see me employing here, and that's a simple bait. We're both baiting for each other, and you can see this BF-109 has come for me, so I put it up and try and go for the reversal. Can't quite get the shots on, but because I'm low on speed, I put it into a horizontal and get out of there as quickly as possible. The P-51D, and I believe that's the Spitfire up there. Oh no, another P-51. Or P-38, sorry. They're dealing with that BF-109 adequately, and that's a chance for me to get a little bit more energy. Obviously, I don't want to put too much distance between me and the friendly furball, because if other enemies come in, I want to be there to help them, nice and quickly. So I just decide to loop around when I'm about 3 kilometers out, and essentially what you can see is that I've gained enough energy to combat, for example, that BF-109 on equal energy, which is not as good as combating the Focke-Wulf, but it is better than where I was previously. And in continuously turning, I'm continuously burning energy, and that is something that I don't want to have to do, because energy in the P-51D is precious, because that is altitude that you can convert into energy, which it can convert into speed, and the P-51 is a fast boy. Now you can see here, this BF-109 G2 decided he'd do a quick head-on with me. I don't shoot because of the P-51 behind, and the P-51 shoots the PF-109G. You can see how easy a bait like that is, and how well you can pull something like that off. It's something that you can really think about when you're playing your P-51s or playing your boom and zoomers in general. How can I bait for my teammates? And your teammates should be thinking the same thing. That's why, in my opinion, if you fly in a squad, you're going to have a good time. Just don't commit to head-ons. Don't turn fight with zeros, or turn fight with things that you know you can't turn fight. And there are some basic rules when you're flying the P-51 that are reasonably straightforward, but at the same time, they require a lot of patience and a bit of skill to execute. You need to be able to climb. And by climbing, you want to climb at a decent speed. Not 20 degrees or 10 degrees or an angle. You want to be climbing at a certain speed. For the P-51 D30, I've personally found that 250 to 280 kilometers per hour seems about right. You'll get to about 4,500 meters in about 4 or 5 minutes, something like that, which isn't too bad, all things considered. It's not too bad. But what you've also got to realize is that by the time you've climbed straight in towards the battlefield, the BF-109s will be at 6 kilometers. Now, the Spitfires will be able to get to that altitude very quickly, but you won't be able to. So what you've got to do is you've got to climb off to the side, and you've got to essentially wait for that first engagement. You can't be the first port of call. As a P-51, you have to come in second, or you have to come in third. You basically have to file in on top of the enemy furball, and that's where you get all your kills, and that's where you get all your performance. If you're not in that situation, then you have to either jockey for altitude, or try and bait the enemy team down a little bit lower. That's something that's not very easy, but if you have teammates around you, you can really pull that off, and you can actually make that work. Particularly if your teammates are a bit, how would I say this, perhaps a bit rushed. They're not very cautious. They're not taking things easy, and they perhaps go to the deck. And your enemy follows, and that's, again, when you follow in. Very, very easy tactics, something that you can really easily do. Boom and zooming is one of the fundamentals of War Thunder props, and one of the things that you also have to realize is that if someone is boom and zooming you, you need to have the speed to be able to deal with that. So if someone is getting close to you and there's no way that you think you can escape, dive a little bit so that you pick up a little bit of speed, perhaps 350 to 400 kilometers per hour, and then you can start perhaps performing defensive maneuvers if you're comfortable enough. If not, then what you have to start doing is start looking for teammates and start flying towards your teammates. And this is exactly what I'm doing to try and help this P-51, but unfortunately, he hits the ground there. That's okay because this BF-109 is going into a vertical, and I'm just waiting for him to hit the apex, and I'm peppering him with machine guns. I whiff the shot because the P-51 has a rudder that locks up at about 700 kilometers per hour, and you know, the rudder in general on the P-51 isn't as strong as I would hope. That's not to worry. We're in a dangerous situation now, very, very dangerous situation. We have a 20mm cannon spraying at us from behind. He knocks our rudder clean off. Very, very lucky it wasn't anything else. And you can see now I've managed to just stall out over on top of that BF-109. I go in for some shots and I don't really get them. I'm now trying to jockey for position behind this BF-109 G2 without a rudder. And this is extremely difficult. You can see the plane is just wallowing around and it's a big fatso right now. So what I've got to do is I've got to anticipate where this BF-109 is going. Luckily, I still have that P-38 with me, and he's going to end up winning the match for us, I believe. But you can see here, the BF-109 is now low on energy, and I can actually comfortably sit behind him, which is one of the things that you never used to be able to do in a P-51. But now with the change in the laminar flow wings, which happened a few years ago, the P-51 is now actually quite decent. And you can get a lucky fire like that, and that will mean the BF-109 is finally able to go down. The P-51D is actually a fairly decent dogfighter if you know what you're doing. The trick is you have to keep your speed and you have to keep your altitude, but once you manage to do both of them, you can sort of go ham. You don't really have to, commit to a hard boom and zoom all the time. But I do recommend boom and zooming as a primary mechanism if you have to, then you start to turn fight. The P-51D-20 in particular happens to be a really, really strong plane at 4.7. It certainly shouldn't go up to 5.3, but in some respects, a 4.3 down tier would help it. Honestly, at 5.7, you start to fight stuff like the TAR 152, and you start to get outclassed. But in that situation, you need to start using your teammates, you need to start using your altitude, and you really should consider whether you should be in a certain situation. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're on Op Husky, and all we have left are the carriers. So landing on a carrier, it's not great. It's really, really frustrating. And you can see here I've overcooked the landing, and almost got it. Almost got it, but I fall off. That's Op Husky for you, ladies and gents. It's pretty sad. I could have gotten an ace. I could have gotten 6 kills. But Op Husky said no, once again. Oh boy. Some things never change. But I do hope Op Husky changes. And in fact, I hope Op Husky is removed from the map rotation. And that would be my my wish. But P-51D, really, really strong plane. The D-20 is one of my favorites. And I've had an absolute blast playing it on stream, playing it offline, just having some fun. Anyway, ladies and gents, take care, and I'll catch you next time. If you made it to the end of the video, type in the comments, the P-51D won the war. See you guys.